Welcome back everyone to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. In today's video, we'll be focusing our attention on the 2024 spring and summer severe weather season from March 2024 through August 2024 and give you what you can expect out your door as we go through the spring and summer months with the severe weather season. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, especially if you like detailed weather breakdowns across North America with accurate weather forecasts. You get that right here on this channel. Also, make sure to press the like button down below. It helps out more than you know. So let's get into the meat and the potatoes of the forecast here, and let's look currently at our climate right now. You can see we are actually in an El Nino phase, and we continue to be in that with above normal sea surface temperature anomalies. You look here at the equatorial Pacific for that trend, and notice you can see the oranges and the reds here. That indicates El Nino. If this was blue, this would indicate below normal sea surface temperature anomalies and likely La Nina phase down across this region. So let's look here at what this means a little bit further at a chart that you probably have no idea what this means, and I'll explain it here. Positive values over plus 0.5 is typically El Nino conditions. Under negative 0.5, that is La Nina. And then when you're between negative 0.5 and positive 0.5, that is considered ENSO neutral, which is a mix of both. So right now, where we sit is plus 1.143. That is a weak El Nino. Going all the way back to the start or the turn of the year on January 1st of 2024, we were at a strong El Nino above that plus 1.5 margin, and we have steadily declined since then, but we are still in a weak El Nino. So what does this mean here? Let's look a little further at what the Climate Prediction Center has for their forecast moving forward through the spring and summer months with this transition out of El Nino. So going through March, it has a 100% chance of El Nino conditions continuing. As we go into April, though, we start to see that go down to a 75% chance here of El Nino conditions in April. And then by May and especially June, we transition here. You see the grays, that is neutral. That is ENSO neutral conditions, which is a mix between La Nina and El Nino conditions. So let's look first here at El Nino pattern. And typically what this means is we have warmer and drier conditions across Canada and the northern US. And we have wetter and cooler conditions across the southern US. That is because the polar jet stream to the north is less active. We have less precipitation and more chances to warm up there where we don't have precipitation. Further south, we have a lot of precipitation that cools us off, especially with that subtropical jet bringing in all of that moisture, keeping us cloudy and cooler across that region. Looking at La Nina, it is the opposite. We see cooler and wetter conditions up to the north, and typically we see milder and also drier conditions across the south here during a typical La Nina season. Let's look back here at one of the analogs that strongly should resemble this upcoming spring and summer severe weather season, and that was 2016, several years ago. And looking at this severe weather season, this is slight risk or greater risk days during that season from March through August. And notice I highlighted 3 months here. That was the most significant 3-month period of this severe weather season, was May, June, and July of 2016, and it had a slow start in the early and middle spring. March into April, there were severe weather days, even some days that had some enhanced, even a moderate risk in there in April. But look at May. We had 11 slight risk days, 9 enhanced, and 1 moderate. Then that really jumped up. We had 5 slight in June, 11 enhanced, and 2 moderate in June. And then in July, we had 12 slight, 10 enhanced, and 2 moderate there. So very significant 3-month period of severe weather. It started slow in March and April, and then it really got going in May and continued to remain down on the gas pedal through June and July of that year of 2016. So will this season be similar or will it be different here? So let's go over the spring severe weather forecast from March through May 1st here. And let's look at climatology during that March period. You can see across the deep south, especially the Dixie Alley region here through Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, that was the area that we typically look for severe weather during the month of March. You have the Gulf of Mexico right out your back door there. Warm, moist, and unstable air can come right off of the Gulf of Mexico right into your area very quickly, as that is considered the Gulf Coast states after all during the month of March. As we go into April, we start to see more of these weather systems trending north, pulling more moist, warm, and unstable air further north, and you see more of the climatology favoring more of Oklahoma, North Texas, and western Arkansas during the month of April. And then in May, you start to see it move even further north, including more of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley here, and the Missouri Valley, and you still see a bullseye there across traditional Tornado Alley in May, across Kansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas there during that time frame. So let's look first at the 500 millibar height anomalies for March of 2024. And this looks interesting. This is basically looking to be an extension of what we see this month in February into the new month of March, because we still have blocking and high pressure over the top here, especially into northern Canada and up in Greenland. That will force our low pressure storm track further to the south across the US, but it will also leave us a little bit cooler across this region as well, which will actually dampen the severe weather season, especially further north. Now let's look at our temperature anomalies here. Not everybody will be cooler. You can see the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and interior New England, and even the Pacific Northwest remaining above normal there into March. The rest of us at normal in the whites or slightly below normal with their temperatures, especially down here into the Four Corners region or into Florida during that time frame. Looking at our precipitation anomalies here, you can see one area to watch out for here in the Central Plains up through the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and then a more primary area as that subtropical jet, like we typically see during El Nino, will continue across the southeast and up the east coast into the mid-Atlantic and the northeast, including the I-95 corridor throughout the month of March. So let's look here at my severe weather forecast for the month of March. And there's two distinct areas we have to keep an eye on here. The more primary area would be Dixie Alley here, or the Gulf Coast states, as you call it, across eastern portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and perhaps parts of Georgia there and northwest Florida in the orange. That is a likely chance of severe weather during that time frame. Some of that could creep further north into places like Arkansas, Tennessee, there into the Carolinas. That is possible during that time frame. And then a secondary area, if we have one of these low pressure systems kind of move off of the subtropical jet and turn up north a little bit, which is possible, especially later into March. I think we could have maybe a triple point setup where we have the low pressure system, the warm front, and the cold front intersecting. That's called the triple point. And we could see some setups that are more marginal, maybe slight risk days up here across the Midwest and the Missouri Valley, especially for Iowa, getting into Missouri there in western Illinois. We'll have to keep an eye on that as we go later into March. Now turning into April, we start to see some changes as we go into that time frame, but notice they're not significant changes yet. Looking here over the top, we still have the high pressure system, or that high pressure ridge into Canada and up toward Greenland. We still see some resemblance of El Nino in this pattern, with that subtropical jet punching in across the southern US during this time. And you can still see with our temperature anomalies, we're still resembling more of that El Nino look. Even though El Nino may be ending by this time, its effects will still be on us here across the U.S. as we go into April. Warmer over the top here into southern Canada and the northern U.S., including the northern plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast, and more near normal conditions across portions of the Pacific Southwest and the Four Corners region, the southern plains, Dixie Alley, and down there into the southeast. Looking at precip, mainly along and east of the Rockies, look to be quite wet throughout the month of April, especially still down here into the deep south and the southeast, with that tropical and subtropical jet continuing down here. So let's look here at our severe weather forecast for April, and I think it starts to get busy a little bit, especially during the second half of April here, especially in the orange and red shaded colors. The most likely area right now for April would be across southeastern Nebraska, southern Iowa, getting into eastern Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, northern Louisiana there, western Tennessee, and western Mississippi. That area could be more primed for some severe weather or tornado outbreaks later into April, but it could be as far north as the upper Midwest or the southwestern Lakes region, the Ohio Valley. We'll have to keep an eye on that as we go deeper into April. Now turning into our last spring month of May, we start to see some changes here and more significant changes. Notice we don't have the blocking very much across eastern Canada or Greenland like we did into March and April. That pushes further west, but we also start to see a ridge of high pressure building out of Mexico and into the Rio Grande Valley down here into southern Texas. That will be the start of our early summer pattern, but looking here at May, we'll start to warm up a little bit across the country, especially here across the lower 48, into the eastern U.S. in particular. The northeast starts to get pretty warm during this time, and with that ridge coming out of Mexico, West Texas, southern Texas near the Rio Grande Valley, we start to get well above normal with our temperatures as we go deeper into May. Looking at the precipitation anomalies, notice the Mississippi Valley and the Ohio Valley on up into the northeast, very active with our precipitation during the month of May here, and that is cause for concern because we're going to have some very interesting storm tracks during May. I think we could have some big bowling ball troughs coming out of the Pacific Southwest, ejecting across the Central Plains and up toward the Midwest, and this could lead to a more volatile situation as we have cold air aloft out west, and then those well above normal temperatures out east, and the clash of the air masses could mean some big severe weather here in especially the red shaded color from the upper Midwest down through the Midwest and into the Central Plains. This region could be primed for some tornado outbreaks as we go through May, and possibly even a significant tornado outbreak in especially this red shaded color as we do get closer. Now let's look here at the upcoming summer severe weather forecast for June through August timeframe, and notice looking at severe weather climatology during June, it starts to shift further north. We still see it across the plain states, but also through the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and still into the southeast here through June. And looking at July, still pretty much the same thing across that region. And then as we go into August here, we start to see it shifting even further to the north and northeast up toward the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and parts of the northeast during this time frame. So now as we go into summer, there's a term that you probably have or may not have heard of. It's called a derecho here. And what a derecho is a line of intense and particularly widespread and also particularly fast-moving thunderstorms. These types of storms typically move over a large distance and are associated with damaging straight line winds here. And they can also produce tornadoes. So this is something you may start to hear as we get closer to this summer season. And how derecho setups work is sometimes you get very strong heat waves and high pressure ridges that come out of Mexico into the United States. They could center themselves over here toward the Pacific Southwest. They could, the high pressure center could be over to the southeast or just the south central U.S. The placement of the high pressure may not be exactly what this map is showing, but just get the general idea that the airflow around a high pressure system is clockwise, and that means all of this heat, all this instability here over top of that high pressure system has to go somewhere, and we start to see more of those progressive derechos, those dangerous lines of storms during the summer season. Looking at derecho climatology here from the Ohio Valley, parts of the Midwest, including Indianapolis, Chicago, Detroit, down here towards St. Louis, getting toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Memphis, Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, all of those areas typically have one derecho every single year, according to climatology. And this tri-state area there of northeastern Oklahoma near the Tulsa region, near Joplin, Missouri there into southwestern Missouri, and toward the Fort Smith, Arkansas region in western and northwestern Arkansas, they typically average 4 derechos every 3 years. Very, very frequent across that tri-state area. And looking at the derecho frequency month by month, we start to see a big jump from April into May. May is actually the leading frequency here at 22%. It jumps down to a 20% there in June, but still pretty frequent. And then in July, it jumps back up to 21% before crashing to 6% there into August. So what does this mean here? Let's look here at our June height anomalies. there's that ridge. That ridge begins to build in May. It builds even stronger into the Great Plains as we go into June, and the airflow will be around it. So the highest and hottest temperatures will be across the western third of the country. Still pretty hot in the middle of the country, but the airflow around this high pressure system will be clockwise. So all that instability will build and actually start to develop some dangerous thunderstorms perhaps in June across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and over here into the Mid-Atlantic states during that month. So I do think it's very likely we see severe weather as we go into June, and I did ponder around on actually putting an extreme risk in here for the potential for a derecho or a series of derechos later into June from the upper Midwest down through the lower Midwest here and into portions of the Ohio Valley. This could include places like Minneapolis, St. Paul, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Chicago, St. Louis, down toward Indianapolis and Cincinnati region, and even up here toward Detroit during the month of June. That's that line of thunderstorms that typically is more widespread and also very intense, producing some very damaging winds that moves very quickly across this region. We'll keep an eye on that. Then as we go into July, we start to see a really big ridge move into the country here, and that will center itself likely across the south central plains and the desert southwestern regions. And again, the airflow around this is clockwise, and we have some very warm temperatures. July is looking like one of the hottest months of this season here across the United States. A lot of these temperature anomalies are 1 to 2 degrees above normal for July, and you know July is hot, so 1 to 2 degrees above normal for July standards is pretty hot. And you can see the precipitation up here for the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, down through the Ohio Valley and the eastern U.S., more active over top of that ridge. So looking at this, I think July could be a rather significant month for derechos as well, up here through portions there of Minnesota, northeast Iowa into Wisconsin, northern Illinois, getting into Michigan, Indiana there, and northwest Ohio. This could be a favored area for that as that instability starts to build on the northeastern side of that ridge of high pressure. And looking at August now, we still see that ridge continuing across the United States. It may dampen, it may weaken some further to the south, but still looking very hot into August, especially out west, and we start to see more of that, what we call a death ridge across this region. And what that means is basically it's shutting off a lot of our thunderstorm activity across the United States. So looking at this in August, we may not really see a lot of thunderstorms out there across the eastern two-thirds of the country as we go deeper into August. So looking at this, I didn't have enough confidence to put a very likely area, as August is for one a long ways away, but this for two, it still I think is going to hinder our thunderstorm development with that ridge really parked over the middle of the country. Maybe tough to get that lifting air, so we'll continue to watch this. But this area in orange is an area of interest for maybe more of those severe weather outbreaks or derechos as we go into that August timeframe, and by then we will be firmly likely into at least a weak La Nina phase. So looking here at kind of summing up the severe weather season, the worst of the severe weather season for 2024 is in the red shaded color. If you're in the red shaded color, be on high alert between March 2024 and August 2024. This could include a few severe weather and tornado outbreaks, including potentially 1 or 2 memorable severe weather outbreaks or tornado outbreaks in this red shaded color for this upcoming severe weather season. In the yellow, above normal severe weather is still anticipated, and that could include down here into Oklahoma, over as far east as Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, or as far west as Montana, Wyoming, or even Nebraska. So we'll keep an eye on that as we do go through the 2024 spring and summer severe weather season. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I know that was a lot of information from March to August. Take it with a grain of salt, but the trends are there. That's a severe weather season will be a big one, especially from May onward through the summer months. Make sure everybody's staying safe out there and pass this information along. And also subscribe to the channel down below for accurate weather forecasts moving forward. I will produce those through 2024. Make sure to press the like button down below. It helps out more than you know, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day out there.